Hello YouTube, Metro85 here, also known as Mike Carvello for Airfare Gaming, and we're gonna be talking about, you know what it is, it's EX3. Now, this is actually my second time recording this video. The first time I went through like a 45-minute thing and realized there was no audio, so this time we got audio, made sure. And because of that, I've actually thought about this a little more than previously for stuff that I've done, so, didn't mean to do that, whoops. But there's a couple here that we're just going to go through, kind of rapid fire. But Gamamon, Leomon, Pulsemon, Minerva Loop, Bagara Army, Old School Imperial, Red-Yellow Hybrid, and I'm pretty Beals as well, and Dexdoru Gray. So let's go ahead and get all of those out of the way. I genuinely think these are the... also Aegismon. These are the decks that I believe right now are just at a spot where they need to be they need more support. Honestly, Leomon could probably be here too. But just going down the line, Leomon, it's basically the blue hybrid replacement in modern day. It's kind of like an aggro deck that has some stun effects, some blockers, things like that. It's like an okay deck, but I just think it needs more. Hopefully we'll get a good Mega Saber Leomon, especially a Saber Leomon that warp digivolves from Leomon would be really cool. In a similar vein to Magnamon X coming off, something like that. I think it'd be really cool. Gamamon, the deck's fun for locals and stuff like that, but it really needs something. The Mega they showed in set 12 ain't it, so I've heard rumors that apparently he's getting 3 different Megas, so hopefully one of them's good. Pulsemon, this deck doesn't really do a lot right now. I think there's a cool concept there, but I just don't think it's it's an okay engine, but the problem is that there's no car built around it, and you're like, well, that's a cool engine, but I would have to see it, do something. And right now that's not really something that it's got. Minerva Loop, I previously thought this deck was pretty good. The hit to calling, I think, makes it a lot worse. And the support that it gets next set, because it finally gets Mervamon, I think it's actually pretty good in that format. There's some Japan tops for it as well at that time, and it seems to do much better more consistently once it has Mervamon and some of its other pieces, so we'll have to see how that goes. Bagara Army, it's sadly not a deck yet. Next 2 sets, it looks a lot more like a deck, but right now it is one of the decks of all time, one of the piles of cards. Imperial's being overshadowed this format by his Scene Kid brother, and don't worry, we're gonna be talking about him. But right now, I think you'll still combo off and you'll still win, but hear me out, so can Beals. It doesn't necessarily mean the deck's terrible. It just means that you have to get very lucky to be competitive with it, and I just don't think blue-green Imperial is where I would want to be until set 12 support comes out. Red-yellow hybrid, pour one out for the homies. We lost Sunrise Buster. I've heard rumors this deck's still kind of okay, but I'd have to see it. I would maybe put it here, the Holy Flame version with the one Sunrise, but that's as high as I'd be willing to concede that point. Again, just kind of doing these ones rapid fire, just because I don't have a super huge amount to talk about. Beelsmon, I think this deck's... I'm gonna put it over here actually. I think this deck's insane once they get their starter deck and once we get the BT12 support. But for now, sadly, he's just kind of an RNG slot machine deck. You kind of don't get there most of the time. But the deck, again, it looks really good. If we had the security rookies right now, I would actually be willing to put this a bit higher because the Impmon is the security rookie, but Bandai still refuses to give us security rookies, so here we are. All right, Post-nerf Crossheart. I genuinely think it sits around here, somewhere between these two. I think the end of tier 2, high tier potential, basically. The deck still does a lot of the really good things that it was trying to do, but just less consistently. You now have to play king mode. If you watch my previous video, you've heard me talk about this. I think it's fine. I think it's okay. If you built into Crossheart and you really wanted to play it, I definitely think it's still a deck. I do, however, think it is significantly more a deck once we get Cross 3, Cross 7, and the BT12 support as well. But yeah, the deck's still cool, but soon. Soon. All right, Blue Flare, high tier 1 potential on Blue Flare. Genuinely, Blue Flare, I think, is crazy good this format. But it has a bit of inconsistency issues sometimes. It's a little too gambly sometimes. If that first, what do you call it? The first Blazing Memory boost doesn't hit, you've basically lost the game almost at that point. Also, the deck is very, very soft to Psychmon, Solarmon, Shakurimon. Do not be playing purple, red, or black without playing those. There's literally no excuse for it. It still just auto wins at least one matchup, maybe two, depending on what people at your locals are playing. You just, yeah, the deck's still very good, but it has some losses out there. Sakuyamon lost a lot in losing. Honestly, this could probably be here too. I would be almost more willing to do this. Put Sakuya here and Imperial up here. But Sakuyamon, it basically lost the only cool thing it did in Sunrise Buster. And now you're just playing a worse security control with less good payoffs. I don't know. The deck will be like locals fun, but the price tag probably makes it priced out of locals fun for some people. But yeah, it's Renamon though. Renamon's not going to just stop getting support. It's one of the fan favorite Digimon. It's going to keep getting support. Your time will happen again. And let's just quickly get these out of the way. Melga, I still think is the best deck in the format. It lost nothing. It lost absolutely nothing. It gained one of its biggest weaknesses in Sunrise Buster being killed. It lost the other aggro deck in the format that was like racing it also being killed. This deck not getting any hits on the ban list is crazy to me. And I think part of it is that, again, Japan didn't have the deck legal because of the short scarcity of the promos. So I think it's just a genuine like difference between regions. Once Japan, like once the reprint set comes out, I think we're going to see like Cool Boy or something like this get hit. Because right now, I'm still seeing tops for it in this format in Japan. And that was with like the really bad versions. Yeah, I don't think we're gonna see this go away in the NA meta until they make it go away. Same vein, I still think Jesmon is like a very strong tier 1 contender this format. I finally have all the pieces. I've been playtesting it a lot more, and yeah, it just does everything. It puts a bunch of blockers. It makes one big dude that kills like your opponent's big dude. It is a little mid to going like if your opponent goes super wide, or if your opponent has like a board wipe, like you lose really hard to Crimson Blaze. I always forget the name of that card. Is it Crimson Blaze? I always forget. Yeah, Crimson Blaze. And I'll be honest, we're going to be talking about that card a lot. That card is probably a staple of this meta. If you're playing red this format, you definitely want to be on Crimson Blaze because it hoses Jesmon, it hoses like red purple Imperial. To a smaller extent, it hoses some of the other decks like Dark Knight, D Brigade. I guess not this D Brigade, but this D Brigade more. Honestly, both. Hydra for sure. I guess not as much Dark Knight. I can't remember what their numbers are right now. I'm thinking they're under 6, but I might be wrong. I feel like he's big for some reason. But yeah, I think Crimson Blaze is going to be a very important option card this format. So we'll have to see. Security Control, I think, is the next like high tier 1 contender. The deck will always be super consistent. But the problem of like, even here is like understandable, but it does its thing. It does it well. I do think there's some decks in this format that make me tempted to put it down here. And based on a deck I think will be really good, I think this gets worse. But yeah, honestly, actually, now that I'm thinking about it a bit more, there's 2 decks in particular that this deck is a bit worse against. Yeah, we'll get to it, but I do think Security Control is still fine. If you have the cards, don't feel bad sleeving it up. If you know what you're doing, you'll probably still do fine. The biggest thing with Security Control, though, is you kind of have to learn every other deck in the meta, and you have to know which linchpin holds their deck together, and then you have to break that. So, like, say you were playing against, I don't know, good example here. So you're playing against Hydra. It's like you have to kill Hydra in this matchup. And before Hydra's there, you have to kill like a Jataramon and like all these cards that are just generating value. And you just might not, like, you can't necessarily just play your removal planning to kill everything on the board, because a lot of the time that's not necessarily a play that's going to get you there. And also, especially against like Hydra, you have to know when you can commit guys to the board, because if they have a Hydra in play, playing a Digimon to pass turn is just losing you the game. So again, security control I think is a deck with a very high ceiling. It really needs like players to be good at it to like do well, but if you know what you're doing, I think it's very strong. Dark Nightmon I think is another solid tier 2 deck this format. It didn't lose anything to the hits really. I guess not at all. And it's still pretty strong. It's just like a consistent, it's basically like a good mid-range deck. It's very good at capitalizing on missteps that your opponent has. If your opponent is slightly slower than they're trying to be, it's really good at punishing that. If your opponent is a lot slower than they're trying to be, it's really good at slapping your opponent in the mouth for a lot of checks early. And natural of playing like black, you have options to evolve into Death X if needed. You have just like Death X in your deck, which most of these decks are gonna have Death X, but I do think when it's in Death X's colors, it's a little bit stronger, but that's me. So this D Brigade is like old school D Brigade, that like more rookie rush style. I think this deck is pretty awful right now. Crimson Blaze is gonna be on a lot more decks. You're gonna see decks playing a lot more like Venusmon and stuff like that, just because like that's what yellow is doing now, and stuff like that is just gonna push like rookie rush decks out of the format. Even decks like Dragon Link, or what I have it in here as Hina's Army, that deck is also just like instantly gonna wipe your board all the time. Hydra's gonna just like, you're gonna turn sideways on your first guy, Hydra's gonna gain 5 memory and your turn's gonna pass. There's just like so many things you lose to nowadays where, yeah, you're basically just not playing a game anymore. Ancient Gray, I think, is a very low tier 3 deck. I think you'll still see someone show up and Omega Lull somebody for their entire life stack. I think it actually gets a lot better in BT12 format, because you have the Burning Gray and Aguni's now as like better stepping stones to build sources underneath. But I do think, I don't know, people like Mario are going to show up and hit you for 6 checks and tell you it's the best deck in the format, but it's not. It still has the same consistency issues it's always had. But again, the deck will be cool. It'll exist. People will probably still play it, and you might see it as a top eventually, but not consistently. Similar boat to that, I feel, is Beelstar. I feel like Beelstar consistently is like a roller coaster. It spikes, and it shows up a bunch, and then it drops off. And then it shows up, and it spikes a bunch, and it drops off. Problems Beelstar has, again, previously mentioned Psychmon, Chikurimon, Solarmon. There's now 3 cards that say entirely you can't play the game, or you have to pass 1 million memory to kill them. That's not the world I'm looking to be in when I play this game, but maybe some people are. But additionally to that as well, we lost Calling. I guess we didn't lose it, but like we've been limited in the amount of callings that we have. These are all things that are seriously detrimental to Beelstar. Yeah, it is what it is. Tempo Angels, this is like that Ophani style like mid-range deck that you saw punch, like the Angelomon X antibody stuff. Deck's still cool. I think it's like it absorbed playing like Venusmon and stuff, but I just don't think it's like good enough. It's definitely cool. It's definitely like an interesting idea, and if you're a good pilot, I think you'll still have some results. But I think on average, it's just a worse version of like Mastemon. But it is a much more budget version of Mastemon. So if you're looking to get that Mastemon dopamine without that Mastemon price tag, I think Ophani is very good for that. You do like a lot of cool stuff. I don't know, you play a Gatomon and then evolve to Angelomon, recover, evolve to Angelomon X, recover, give security attack minus, go into Ophani, recover, blow up something. It's still cool. It's still like a cool tempo deck, but I just think it's not doing anything powerful enough anymore. And then I always do these two together, just because like I personally feel like this is the case. You get Gaiomon and Wargray X. To me, Wargray X is just like the better Ancient Gray a lot of the time. He has way more like card draw and searching. He's a lot easier to find all of his pieces. And he basically does the same thing, but instead of needing to find Alda, you just have to find Wargrey, or like the actual Wargrey. Excuse me. Basically, that same vein of just like Omega lulling somebody's security stack without response is pretty strong. But he has the same problem he's always had for like the last format. He's kind of slow to find his pieces, and then sometimes he has trouble clearing out the game. He can really take that whole stack, but unless you have Omni, you're just not getting it that turn. And without getting it that turn, sometimes you're just too slow in the format. Also, in the sense of Wargrey, you've now gained like Hydramon as this new enemy too, because it's like you can turn sideways, take their whole security stack, but then you'll both gain 1,000,000 memory. They'll gain it from you turning sideways. You'll gain it from... I guess you won't gain it unless you're on Wargrey X. But yeah, if you're on regular Wargrey, you'll just clear their whole stack, and Hydramon will give them 5 memory passing the turn, preventing you from Omniing. This card's really annoying. There's another card too in this list we're gonna talk about, but I do think Bloomlord and Examon both start pushing out, and even Chaos Dramon for like a lower extent, a lot of these decks. You can no longer be as cute with these combo kills because your opponent might just have a wall of garbage vegetables that are going to gain 1,000,000 memory. Armor Rush. Oh, sorry, I didn't talk about Gaiomon. Gaiomon, kind of the Wargrey older brother. He honestly is still really good. I do think a lot of the decks that are getting better are like Jesmon. In most cases, the ones that top don't really play Tamers. Blue Flare, it has its 1/4 cost Tamer, but other than that, its guys are really awkward to hit. Jesmon, you can blow up a bunch of Sistermons. That's pretty good. Melga, you can blow up like Cool Boys and stuff, but you can see that I'm not too excited about the prospects of what Gaiomon can blow up. And in that same vein, I'm not really excited about the prospects of what Gaiomon can do. He genuinely, to me, feels like a worse version of another deck we're going to talk about here. And I think a lot of his faults really shine through in the new format. In that same vein, Armor Rush, I think, is like I think it's somewhere around here. It might be here. But... And when I refer to Armor Rush, I'm not referring to like the previous like BT8 style or even like the Magna X style. I'm more referring to that Jesmon GX style list that topped. I think that deck has a lot of legs, but I also think that player ran incredibly hot to get that result with it. So yeah, no disparaging to that player at all. I just genuinely think the deck may not have performed as well in a more fleshed out version of the format. And as well, I don't know if that player would have performed as well especially again in the EX3 format, where so many of the decks are doing like these big synergy-based cool combos, and you're just kind of building a dude. And it's like, he's still a good dude. He does stuff, but I don't think he's quite like as good or like as able to close out. And then we've got Grandis. I think Grandis is a strong tier 2. Grandis Kawagamon, I think, is one of the weirdly most consistent decks in this game since release. It, unlike the other OTK decks, it's just interactable enough where like no one ever wants it hit, but in that same vein, it constantly just runs hot and sweeps events because it's just like, their security was dead. They lost on like turn 4. It's like, yep, sure did. Yeah, the deck's really strong. It constantly gains pieces. It gains even more new pieces next set. It's just crazy to me. Yeah, I love it. It's like one of my favorite like pet decks, but even I don't even really play it that much just because it's very like, did I have it all? Well, you've lost. Did I have a mid amount of it? I probably didn't get there. And because of that, it's a little too inconsistent for what I'm trying to be when it comes to playing this game. But I do think it's very strong, and I do think you'll still see it sweep events. Alphamon, rest in peace, brother. I don't know about the end of tier 3. I'll put you up here. Also, Imperial should be a bit higher. There we go. So Alphamon, basically the way that I view Alpha is he was very good. It was very much the Yu-Gi-Oh player's Digimon deck. It was a lot of triggers. It was a lot of like sequencing that you had to know, and stuff like that. And unfortunately, we lost Dexdoru Gray. It died for Black War Greymon Exosins coming next set. But I think you can still play it with Greymon, and I think it's still like an okay deck. So if you're someone who like bought all the Alphamon cards and you're feeling sad on it, look at playing Greymon. I think the deck's still cool. You can also shuffle rookies around to play Sunariza again to get that security attack again. I think it's very easy to still like have a game plan, but for sure all of the numbers have to be tweaked. You no longer can play as many Dexdoru Gray and stuff like that because you're not gonna have the Doru Gray. D Reaper, I'm gonna put it like mid tier 3, and my reasoning for this is I've heard some whisperings in the land of Japan of a D Reaper player who just recently in this format just topped with it again. And I think if we get a list for that, I think you're gonna see players play it because it's like $50 deck, unless you're playing Death Exes, and it's like a $350 deck. But genuinely, I still think Crimson Blaze being everywhere makes it a bit sussy-wussy, but a lot of the other stuff is still fine. There is at least 2 new contenders that I'm thinking of that can attack unsuspending, one of them being Jessmon. I guess there's a bunch of decks that can attack unsuspending. So if you think your locals is going to have a lot of Machine Dramon, a lot of Imperial, or a lot of Jessmon, you probably don't want to play D Reaper, because those decks will be over 15k and they will punch you in the face very hard. But otherwise, I think the deck's pretty strong. Gallantmon. I think Gallantmon's like, I think this is like the low table champion. I think this deck's very, it's like another of that example where it's like if a deck just does its one thing really consistently, then it's probably pretty good. And Gallantmon kind of does that. It's really good at removal. It's really good at like popping a big guy. And honestly, like, I constantly play against it at locals, and I'm like, man, this deck's a lot better than I think it is. But I will say, I think it suffers a similar situation to Beals. I do think it's better than Beals right now, because I think it supports a little more consistent instead of the slot machine that is flipping cards off your deck. But I think the price tag of Gallantmon for, like, Crimson modes and stuff prices people out of trying it. Because it's like, it's a very expensive upfront commitment to a deck that might not be great. And I think because of that, we're not seeing as much innovation on it. And I feel the same regard for Beals. And I think once like the starter deck for Beals comes out, more of those cards are in circulation, people are brewing more, we're going to see Beals top a bit more, for sure. And not just due to the power level of its support, due to the accessibility that it's going to create. Because that is truly a thing that happens if people can't access it. Like, if you ever played Yu-Gi-Oh, there was a deck in Yu-Gi-Oh way back in the day that was called Diamond Dude Turbo. And that was like Yu-Gi-Oh's first like tier 0 best deck. Everyone had to be playing it. Some of the people who topped in that format playing it like only played like 1 Elemental Hero Stratos. Some played 2. And it wasn't because the deck shouldn't play 3 Stratos. It should have played 3 Stratos. It was that people were selling the card for like $150, or there wasn't an online, like a store near you that had it. And that availability prevented it from being like as apparent as it should have been right away. But we've seen it before in many card games where a deck that may have been very good historically was never really tested because of the price tag. But we'll have to see. New Machine Dramon, I actually think is very strong. I think Chaos Dramon has added a lot to the deck. It gives you the ability to reset that stack. You're no longer weak to being bounced to bottom of deck or hand. He's just he's coming in from the bleachers. Also, you picked up the Volcanomon in either the Ragna or the Jessmon starter deck. I forget which one of them. So you have another access to a security attack, I believe. And yeah, all in all, he just like suddenly does a lot more than he did before. He has a lot more gameplay that didn't exist before. And I think he's actually very, very strong as a locals deck. Plus, might as well start picking up Machine Dramon stuff now, because next set we're going to the moon, boys. Bloomlord, I think, is our other very strong tier 1 deck. I think this deck is kind of nuts. There's one more deck that's going up here for sure, but I think this deck's nuts. It vomits a bunch of... If your opponent doesn't have Crimson Blaze, you're probably winning the game. If you resolve Bloomlord for a bunch of Pierce, it's insane. If you're like a bunch of checks and Pierce, it's really good. If you resolve a Hydra and then a Bloomlord, your opponent's lost the game. They just can't do anything anymore. Their best cards will always be going to the bottom of their deck, and anything else is going to get pierced over. Also, whenever they turn sideways, you're going to get the equivalent of like 4 ice walls worth of memory. It's just cred. It's just kind of crazy. Make sure you pack those Crimson Blazes, send those vegetables back to the forest, and hopefully be happy. Full D Brigade, I think, has got a high tier 1 potential. I think the deck's very strong with the new changes. They finally added a removal option for the deck that still let you play your game. Also, it gave you a reason to want Darkdramon now, because you're going to have good Inheriteds, and he's going to restand and do stuff. Additionally, they finally gave us Decoy, so now your Darkdramon's not just going to get blown up to an incidental removal spell. All in all, new support for D Brigade, top tier. 4 Great Dragons. I'm gonna put it at high tier 3. I've seen some lists where it's topped. To me, it seems, again, it hits that spot where it's just a little too inconsistent for me, because like I just think of the world where 4 of the option card are in security and you just lost the game, or maybe you won the game. Honestly, unsure, because they would go into play, but maybe not, depending on the deck you're playing against. I just think you're a little bit too slow and a little bit too reliant on Gamba to have the cards engraved to do the effect, but overall, I think the deck is definitely cool, but not quite what I would want to be sleeving up if I wanted to win the event, you know? Hina's Army. I think I'm brewing this deck a lot, so like I'm a little biased. I actually think it might be closer to here, but right now, I'll put it at the end of tier 2. Put you up here. I think this deck's actually like very strong. I think it's very luck dependent, which is why I will refuse to put it up here. But if you just like have Hina and you're just like running hot, I think the deck's very strong. I'm personally going to be looking at a list playing Dorbic and Flamedramon to be able to DNA into Ragna as well, just some extra aggro and extra like push potential. Shout out to Skylar, because he said that to me, and then I started like really deep dive in Japan lists and started seeing it more, and I was like, okay, this is probably the play. We're gonna put these in here. I'm also possibly looking at a list that plays the Gyomon promos and Gigimon to like draw early, but yeah, I think the deck does a lot. I'm personally playing Digimon Emperor and Takuya in it, because what happens is with Metallic Dramon, the D-Digivolve, you're gonna lock them out of Digivolving, and then if they promote and swing, you're going to get a bunch of memory. Also, they both have draw engines, which let you basically build towards more, like, digging deeper, basically. Purple Red Imperial. I'm going to slam him up here. This was my big surprise this format. Me and my buddy thought this was a meme deck. We thought it was going to be very mid. Japan players seemed very mid on it. And then we started playing it, and it started winning a lot. And then we went, what are the bad matchups for this deck? And then we played it against Blue Flare, and it won. And then we played it against Jesmon, and it won. And then we played it against Hina's Army, and it won. And then we played it against Melga, and it won. And he was running real hot, but that's still a lot of games that it was doing really well in for a deck that we thought was a meme. It's a little bit soft on the end, because like it has a little bit of a struggle closing the game. I will say that. But it gets in, it punches your opponent super hard. It takes like it negates their security checks, and if you have a tie, it's like 3 checks. It's half your security stack with no checks. Which I was playing Hina's Army against that, and it hit 2 Hinas, and I was like, oh nice. Instead of winning the game on the spot, I now lost instantly, because I have no comeback potential from this. And then in addition, it also just blows up your opponent's whole board. It wipes everything, and then whatever they keep, it pierces over. So definitely don't sleep on that deck. That deck is a lot stronger than I think. I think it's another one of those ones that you might get price tagged out of it. However, I do think it's very important to understand its power. And then as far as Examon, we're going to slam up here for sure. So Examon is basically the new boogeyman. I think he's very strong. I think he's a little bit weaker than what some people would say, but I still think he's very strong. The evade keyword is obviously crazy. There's so many decks that wish that they had evade, but did not, sadly. And I think, I just think that I just want them to be careful. I just really want them to be careful with it, because I think if you print cards that are a little too strong with evade, it will run out of control very easily. And I just hope that they are very careful about which cards they put evade on. Unless I'm like remembering wrong, but this is the archetype with evade, correct? I'm just like looking at pieces and I'm like, I'm just looking at the rares though, so like maybe I'm just not looking at the right stuff. Does this deck not have evade? Am I making that up? Am I crazy right now, live? I swear. Okay, maybe I'm wrong. I swore this deck had evade. I am very confused. It must be an inherited or something that I'm just not seeing properly. Give me like 30 seconds. We're gonna gains blocker. Does it not have evade? Am I making that up? Is evade not a keyword yet? Oh no, okay, it's just okay. I read every blue card or every green card in this archetype, and I'm like, what? No, it's on the blue card. That's why. Yeah, so it's on Wing Dramon. It gives you evade. Basically, if it would be deleted, you can suspend it to prevent it. It basically means that decks like Imperial can't actually blow up your whole board. It means decks like, again, Jesmon can't just slam into you. You're pretty soft still to things like Machine Dramon de-digivolving you 3 times. And Blue Flare freezing you, you're pretty soft too. But I will say the Blue Flare freeze is a little hard to get unless you have 2 guys in play. So try to manage that, especially if you're going to be playing Examon. But the deck's very strong. It does its thing. I do think it's another one of those decks that will get less representation than it probably should due to price, because the necessary 4 secret rares to play it will be a problem. But we'll have to see what it looks like. Honestly, I might be one of those people getting priced out of it. I don't know if I want to commit to it without having like a clear image of what I want to do with it. And right now I'm just having a lot more fun brewing Hina's Arby and Machine Dramon and stuff and Jesmon to want to mess with Examon. But if I just, from going to locals, end up pulling the cards, then we'll probably look at building it up. And then we got to our last 2. We've got Mastamon. I think it's low tier 2 right now. I think it's pretty strong. Again, I think it's just like I tier 2 is kind of the pit where decks with heavy RNG go to die. But Mastamon is still a very fine contender. Obviously, next set you're going to go to the moon with your new support. So don't be sad. Hold strong, Mastamon, brethren. And then clap cheeks at next set with all of your crazy support with way too many lines of text on it. But yeah, you guys get to kind of do everything next set. And then last thing, we got Ragna. And you might be asking, but Mike, where's Ragna tier? Come on. Where's Ragna Sadface, where he goes by himself? We've learned the ways of our mistakes. Ragna, a lot better than I thought it was. Ben, the YouTuber, has a amazing video about it. It might be the single best piece of Digimon content on YouTube. So big shoutouts to Ben, but he talks about his store championships, talks about Ragna. We took that list, we tried it out. It was nuts. It was really fun. Me and my buddy just keep calling the deck Book, which is a Twitch gambling meme for old XQC hitting the slot machine, because that game is like, you play the level 7 turn 1, hope your opponent doesn't run away with the 7 mana, or the level 5, sorry, that costs 7. Hope your opponent doesn't run away with the game. Did he not run away with the game? All right, evolve into Briar Ludramon, evolve again, win. Or evolve into the red one, swing, same thing. And like you can make like turn 1 Ragnas that just blow up your opponent's setup, trash a card, swing, and then it's like you're already so far ahead. It's like it's turn 2 and you have a Ragna in play. They're not coming back from that a lot of the time. And thanks to the Briar Ludramon, if you're playing it, which I think you should be, and the Blackmoor Greymons, he's going to be immune to Digimon effects. Being immune to Digimon effects means this, and this can all just go away. And this, actually. He's just immune to all of that. So much of this game is moving away from option card removal to Digimon removal, and Briar Ludramon just says, no thank you. Don't make me tap the sign. Immune to Digimon effects. And I think that is kind of crazy. But Ragna, a lot more fun than we expected. I don't think I'm right on everything. I think there's some numbers that could probably be moved around, but realistically, the argument of what is and isn't tier 1 is kind of subjective. And I think inherently the nature of the game is not every deck is going to get a hit on the ban list, and not every deck is going to get power crept out. So decks like Metal X, Jesmon, Blue Flare, they're just going to exist. And unless someone is forced to switch, they won't. So I think that's a big thing that this game does both well and poorly. I say poorly because sometimes it can make tournament environment feel stale. It feels like you're playing against the same deck all the time. But if it's not broke, don't fix it. And that should be a world you want. You should want your new cool deck to be able to compete against last set's cool deck and have them both be highly competitive. So I understand, like, and again, this is why some YouTubers say you shouldn't use Japan's numbers, because Japan, what they do is when a new deck comes out, they go like, oh, hey, Examon came out. I don't want to play with you anymore. And they go throw their toy in the garbage, which I kind of feel the same sometimes. This card game, it has so many cool ideas to brew. It has so much cool potential. Why would you only want to play one deck when there's like 6 decks that are all cool? The answer is money, but if you're crazy like me and you kind of build everything, you just kind of want to play something. Like there was a point in set 9 format where I played a different deck every locals, and we have locals twice a week. So I was playing 8 different decks a month. It was so much fun to just build everything and brew. And then at the end of the format, I just played security control every week, so I'm a loser. But regardless, again, this is pretty much basic where I think it's going to shape up. I think especially in the tier 2 to tier 1 potential, there's like adjustments that can be made there. I think the bottom tier I have pretty much locked. I don't think I would really... maybe some 4 Great Dragons player will surprise me, or maybe D-Reaper is actually broken. But I think right now this is a good indication of what we'll probably be looking at for the next format. But if you guys enjoyed, smash that like button. Feel free to subscribe. I'm going to be doing these videos every set, and we're going to have deck profiles, gameplay, all of that. Check out the links in the description. We're going to be posting our new merch there as well. We just got some new like Yu-Gi-Oh playmats and Yu-Gi-Oh accessories added to the store. Digimon stuff coming soon. And make sure to ring the bell to get notified whenever we post a new video. All right, guys, have a great day.